Today we're sharing why we worried about retiring early and specifically our money worries.
In 2019, we reached financial independence and said goodbye to our corporate jobs and to our paychecks.
Stay with us until the end of the episode because we're going to share why we are no longer stressed out about our finances.
Hello and welcome back to our subscribers. Thanks for joining us for another episode. We are still in Toronto in another Airbnb apartment. And if you're new to our channel, I'm Gillian.
And I'm Stephanie. We're a couple who reached financial independence and retired decades ahead of the usual age. If you're looking for videos about financial independence or retiring early, then definitely subscribe for a new video every single Thursday.
We recently shared the lessons we learned after being retired for 6 months, and you can check that video out in the description below. In that video, we addressed some of the common questions and concerns related to retiring early and how much they had affected us 6 months into retirement.
So these common concerns included things like the loss of identity because we're stepping away from our corporate careers. They included things like becoming socially isolated because we've lost our colleagues that we would see every day at work. And of course, none of our friends are retired early. And finally, the issue of becoming bored because we no longer had our work routines to keep us occupied day to day. So if you want to see how we address those concerns and how we feel about them, you can check out that video in the link below.
Most of what we discussed in that video was the emotional side of retiring early. So today we're going to do a deeper dive on the financial side. We're sharing all the fears and worries we had before we finally gave up our jobs and our paychecks.
But first, before we dive into it, we'd love to know from you. Do you have any concerns about having enough money in your retirement? Yes or no? Let us know in the comments below.
Let's get started by talking about the stress we had at the prospect of no longer having a job and losing our paychecks. We had both worked basically continuously from the time we graduated until the time we retired. So we were very used to having that steady salary every month coming into our bank accounts.
Of course, we knew that once we retired, we would have our portfolio of investments to rely on. That's what allowed us to retire in the first place. But the challenge for us was figuring out how to structure our investments so that they would provide us with a regular monthly cash flow. And this would effectively replace the paychecks that we were so used to receiving.
And of course, we were nervous at the prospect of selling off our equities to fund our day-to-day living expenses. If this were done during a down market, there would be the potential to reduce our net worth really early into our retirement.
The solution for us was to allocate a portion of our investments over to fixed income, which we'll talk about in a lot more detail next week. However, it's important to note that we're not invested in your typical corporate or government bond fixed income. Instead, we're in higher yielding syndicated mortgages. And again, stay tuned for next week for more details.
These fixed income investments provide us with regular interest payments. They basically replace the paychecks we gave up when we quit our corporate jobs and give us the reassurance we're looking for as we move forward in our new life.
The next thing that we were worried about is whether our annual budget would be enough and if we were going to end up living frugally for the rest of our lives. So we enjoy living frugally and saving money, but we were worried that we would be permanently stuck living on less than we were comfortable with.
This worry really comes down to answering the big question about retirement. Have I saved up enough money to support my desired lifestyle for the rest of my life? We talk more about how to come up with the right amount of savings in our free 7-day course, which is linked up in the description below.
If you've been watching our videos, you'll know that we spend a lot of time talking about living frugally and saving money. But just to be clear, that's not because we're struggling to make ends meet. It's actually because we enjoy the process of being frugal and seeing how much value we can get for every dollar we spend. And in fact, that's why we love traveling in low cost of living countries so much.
Our spending is purposely lower than it needs to be. This is all part of our plan to live more frugally during the first few years of our retirement. We ended up being conservative and saving more than we need to spend, so the answer is no, we won't need to live frugally forever.
The next worry that we had: will we need to be nomads living overseas for the rest of our lives? So if you've been following our story, you'll know that we are nomads with no permanent home anywhere in the world. So we are traveling full time, primarily across Europe with a focus on low cost of living countries.
Before starting this lifestyle, we worried what would happen if we wanted to stop traveling and make a home somewhere. If so, would it have to be in a low-cost country because we simply couldn't afford to live long-term in our home country of Canada?
Fortunately, one of the benefits of being an expat is that we feel a little bit more flexible about where we call home. So after living in Singapore for over 6 years, we don't feel a need to settle down later in the same city where we were born and raised. We feel that we have the whole world to choose from.
That said, if we did want to retire in our home country or somewhere equally expensive, we have accommodated for this cost in the next phase of our retirement plan, which we'll talk about now.
We know that growing older can come with all kinds of additional costs. So what if we want to live closer to our families in a high-cost country? What if we have health issues that need to be dealt with? And what if we just want to have more material comforts or even luxuries as we get a little older?
Given that there might be a number of unknown costs, we've decided on 2 phases to our retirement. First, an earlier phase, the one we're in now, where we live more frugally than we really need to. And then a later phase where we can increase our spending in line with our needs.
So that increased spending might go towards little luxuries like taking our family on a getaway, or it could be for necessities like increased support for health issues, or it could simply go towards charitable donations, for example. So these are all things that would be supported by having a little bit extra in the budget.
Finally, we were worried about economic events that were beyond our control. Who would have predicted that during our first year of retirement, we'd see a global pandemic and the start of a recession? Of course, we didn't know that those specific events would happen, but we always knew there was a risk of an economic downturn once we retired.
That's exactly why we put a lot of time into our risk management strategy in the year before we retired. We wanted to have all the details in place so that we could be confident in weathering any prolonged storms. So here are a few key pieces of our risk management strategy. First, we wanted to save up enough money so we had a comfortable buffer, which we talked about a little bit earlier.
We've also set aside a year's worth of cash in a savings account in case there are any interruptions to our cash flow. That way, our day-to-day expenses will never be impacted.
Finally, we have an emergency fund set aside, and this is intended to cover anything unexpected above and beyond our regular monthly expenses.
So now that we're in the midst of a recession, we feel that our needs are well taken care of. There shouldn't be any need to sell off our equities at a loss to cover our daily living expenses. We talk more about our whole risk management strategy in a video, which I'll link up in the description below.
Now we'll share why we're actually less stressed about money now than before we retired. Before we reached financial independence, stressing about money had become a full-time job. So we were busy tracking our spending, analyzing everything, cutting costs, questioning our investments, pressure testing our financial independence number. It had truly become 24/7 all about our finances.
Once we reached financial independence, suddenly things felt totally different. We had reached our financial goals and could feel confident that our investments and cash flow and emergency fund were all in place. We finally felt free of stress and worry and could focus on our new life.
If you found this video helpful and would like to know about the investment strategy that got us to financial independence, we recommend watching this video right here. You can go ahead and click on it now.
And you can also let us know you enjoyed the video by hitting like, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you back next time.